Hello, music lovers, and welcome back to the Woodshed. This week we have the fabulous Dani Rabin from the band Marbin. Marbin is a extremely cool fusion band who's opened for some of the biggest guys in the game, played all the cool jazz festivals, and outside of that, I'm sure you guys, if you're guitar nerds, that's why you're here at the Woodshed anyways. You've probably seen Marbin. Outside of that, I recently got a chance to hang with Dani at a very small, intimate house concert, and they did some old school jazz standards and some Sinatra and all this cool stuff. So, Dani, welcome to the Woodshed, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah,
How's
man.
things been going?
It's good. We got back from the COVID road like yesterday. No, day before yesterday. We did 16 shows in 16 days. Went all the way down to Texas. Got a COVID test on the way back. We don't have it. Managed to slip. I don't know how we don't have it, but we don't have it. But yeah, it's been wild, man. It's really it's an insane time to be alive in general, to be a musician specifically. We had I think 110 shows canceled up till now. We were booked pretty solid, and just had this idea that we're gonna just post this thing on our Facebook. We have a very big group. It's like 300,000 people there, and just ask our fans who wants to have a concert in their backyard, invite their friends, their family. And we just got all these offers. We just did it night after night after night after night. And it was wild. It was just so much. It was fun. The people that we were doing it with, most of them, it was like their most exciting time of the month or the year. I don't know. And for us, we were partying like we were 20 again. It's awesome.
Man, so it's really creative the way that we're all trying to do things, and I think the house concert is something that is extremely creative. And I applaud you for getting out there and trying to do it, and also being aware and trying to do it safely. And man, getting out there and playing your instruments, the backyard, the open space.
Yeah.
You actually did it at some friends of mine here in East Tennessee. And it was extremely, extremely cool. Man, so quick background here. Let's assume that a viewer of mine has not got hip to you guys. Man, will you give us just a couple of cliff notes of how your extremely cool origin? People don't realize. Some people may not realize you're born in Israel and you relocated to the United States. You live in Chicago. Man, give us a quick glimpse into how you met other Dani. I'm going to call her other Dani, and how you guys formed Marbin, and like your kind of like mission statement, your goal when you guys met. You met in Israel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So mission statement, we set out a long time ago to make shredding not a profound word. We're bringing shredding back. So
you're the Justin Timberlake
yeah, that's right.
Jazz
We're the
fusion.
Justin Timberlake of shredding
back.
We're bringing shredding back. No, we met 2007 in Israel. I just graduated from Berkeley. Dani just he went to the IDF. He got back from fighting, and we met through a common bassist friend a day before we were supposed to have our first show. As soon as we met, we had like a very strong connection. We had some severe bromance, and we just started writing music together. And we wrote and wrote and wrote, and then we decided that we're going to move to Chicago together to start trying to have a career. That was 2008. In 2009, we put out our first solo album, our first Marbin album, which is the self-titled Marbin, and it's a duo album. After that, 2011, we put out our second album. That was already a quartet, and we met up with the rhythm section from Pat Metheny Group. So it was Steve Rodby from there and Paul Wardico, who played before Antonio Sanchez did in the 80s and 90s. And they were on our second and third album. And then we started touring full time in 2011, like a lot of shows. We played like 250, 300 shows a year for a lot of years. And in those days, we opened up, we were the opening act for Alan Holdsworth's band. We did
Who is that? Who is that guy? What does he do?
He actually, you know what's crazy? He left his amps here then he died. Yeah, it's so weird. Yeah, so yeah, he was a great guy. He was really a one of a kind human being. Very, very funny. We had, but by the time that was his last American tour in 2012, and we were sharing a van. We were in close proximity. It was a very interesting experience. He was also a big drinker, and that was kind of like the final days of that. So we were splitting our time being his nannies and his opening act. We were really taking care of him. And again, he lived hard, and that stuff tends to not end too well. But for us, it was interesting on a lot of levels. And yeah, after that, we opened for Scott Henderson's band too for a while. Did a few tours with them when they were still touring the U.S. And then just kept making albums. That album that You Have Strong thing is our 8th, and just hitting it hard, playing all the time, trying to shred for people.
I love it, dude. I love it.
Yeah.
So there's two things that I want to say. It's like listen to your stories makes me think about how wonderful your social media is, and if no one's following,
thank you.
If our people in the woodshed aren't following Marbin, please do. The music's amazing, obviously, that's why we're here, but B, the sense of humor and the wittiness, it's extremely good to me. I've got I actually have unopened it. I listened to it on Spotify, so I could just keep the cellophane wrapped on it. It's nice and glossy. This is the record. This is Strong Thing. Man, you have outside of being a musician, you have a wonderful way of storytelling. And
thank you.
to do a series of house concerts, it's extremely different, right? To do an intimate anything is extremely different. Even if you were to do that same set on a big stage, and you have a way of telling these great stories while also weaving it together with the music that you guys play. Mm-hmm. And tell me about the approach that you took in the house concerts, coming from this huge jazz fusion career. Mm-hmm. Where you're playing with the guys. Like, when you say jazz fusion, it is Holdsworth and Henderson. Those are the guys.
Right.
Everything. So you've been in this world, and you've been playing. Marbin is a 4-piece live most of the time, correct? Yeah.
Right. All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd actually seen you. You had played in Knoxville. I came to your show and loved it. It was great. And coming from that scene where you're plugged in, you got your amps, you got your volume, you got drummers and all this stuff, and obviously 2020 happens. 2020 is throwing haymakers at everybody, and everybody's trying to rebound from it. And you decide to do this duo gig. The setup was you on a gypsy jazz, Jatane Selmer looking kind of ride. You'll have to tell us the model. But other Dani predominantly played soprano sax,
right?
But it's the curved one. It's not the Kenny G one. Not Kenny G.
Right.
Curved.
Not Kenny G.
Yeah, micro machine. And then he played. Did he play tenor on a song or
tenor?
Two?
Yeah.
So, and you were doing no jazz fusion.
No,
and
zero.
It was so. I remember probably annoying you. It was so refreshing to hear traditional swing jazz, Sinatra, Gershwin, like that whole era performed, man, because most of the time in the jazz community, because it is high ceiling, high intellect, high chops genre, most of the time when people play standards, they want to just
they want to get to business. They want to show you what they got.
Yeah, let me show you my firepower, right?
Yeah.
It was so refreshing to hear, and I'm really trying to think of the last time live I've ever heard jazz standards played in a traditional way. And I
Hmm.
honestly, I can't even think of it because
Hmm.
every time I go hear jazz, everybody's kind of, showing off and showing the firepower. Man, what was the thought process behind that? How did you is that where your forte was coming from a jazz background, or were you a rock guy? You were a rock guy. and
Rock guy.
and the last thing I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, I ask you, um show us some of the isms, the standard isms, maybe a lick or two, maybe one for beginners, then one for our advanced guys. That's a big
Hmm.
question with a lot of different caveats, so just
Sure.
run with it, man.
All right. So first of all, the jazz thing for the duo, it was just very pragmatic. Okay, I'll start here. My background in gypsy jazz, a lot of people like to make up a story about somebody when they just they check you out on social media, and then they piece what they think you are in their mind, what makes sense to them. So a lot of people assume that for me, jazz or gypsy jazz or standards or that stuff came first, but that's not the truth. I grew up on Metallica. That got me into guitar, and then after that was all the shrapnel guys, into the fusion guys, later on into the jazz guys. That was the chronological order of things. When we were touring full time already with Marbin, we noticed around 2012 a problem, which was we were making almost no money. It was very hard to survive, and we were on the road all the time. So the one thing we had plenty of was free time on the road with nothing to do. And like Knoxville's a good example. We were just like be sitting in some cafe in like Market Square for like 8 hours before our gig with nothing but time to burn. So me and Dani in those days decided that my ex-wife got me like a gypsy jazz guitar, and I started just kind of noodling around. I watched Sweet and Lowdown when I was a teenager, and I always that was my exposure to that. And then I had like a VHS of Jimmy Rosenberg in a hotel room playing before a Carnegie Hall concert. I knew I liked it, but I never really knew too much about it. But I was already playing fusion, and I knew some standards as vehicles for shredding, the kind of way you learn them in school or something. And during those days, we just decided we're going to start busking for money on the street. And in no time, we were making more money busking than we would at night with Marbin. So we'd pull up to town, we'd play for 5-6 hours on the street, make like $300, then go play a show and make like $150. And that would be our day, in the early days. And it was tough, but I think just playing so many hours, just the two of us, we really started getting a handle on this repertoire, and we just get bored with what we know, and we'd listen to music and pick up more and more and more songs, and eventually we knew hundreds of these. So it was really when COVID hit and all our shows got canceled, it was just a question of, we could do a lot of things, but to do some sort of reduced fusion act without a drummer, where I just play like funk guitar and Dani shreds, would just be so pathetic.
Yeah, it loses the magic. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And also I'm taking like some vocal lessons now, and I just want to practice a lot of times.
Man, your
So
singing was exceptional. You have a really smooth voice, and it sounds like you've done that stuff for
thank you.
decades, man.
Well, I do, so this is our social media in Marbin. I do a live feed. I started the first day it came out. I just remember we were on the road. Facebook just had this live button. We were all just looking. It's like, what's this? Like, pow. And all of a sudden we were like, hey guys. And everybody's like, hey guys. And it's just like day one. We're just like there exploring this new technology. So I do like between an hour and 2 hours a day, almost every day of the year, when I just hang out there and, sing songs for people. So, I've been singing to my phone for a very long time,
Wow.
uh, but not to people. That tour was the first time I actually had a microphone, and exploring how that works was interesting too. Um, but yeah, we've never done that. Never done any sort of like recording of singing. But I know all these songs, and I do it a lot. And Dani plays that stuff great. And for me, it's a trade-off. It's actually kind of destroying my playing too, because when you're soloing on something, and a lot of what swinging is, when you listen to like Louis Armstrong's band, it's like the drums are playing really in time and the bass is playing really stiff, and the way he's playing trumpet is interacting with this rhythm
Playing
that you're
around.
hearing. It's exactly, it's like just finding, like the band is like boom, gang, 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 and the way he solos is just like bam, gang, 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 gang. Everything's like dragging, and pushing. So when you have something to play against, you can do all these interesting things with time. But when I'm soloing in this context, I'm giving time, so I'm soloing on nothing. And I'm noticing now, coming home and playing with like some backing tracks and stuff, like what it does to my playing, which is not a positive thing, because when you have to also like kind of, shoot your lines on air with nothing to support it, you're playing the time, not on the time, so it's a weird thing. So I think that answered some of the questions. The other one was about jazz, specifically jazz licks, gypsy jazz licks.
No, not specifically gypsy jazz. It could be gypsy jazz, but I would like it. I always have been lately trying to ask our guests to give us a little something, a little nugget of something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if a guy's never played jazz before, one of the things that you would quintessential, like almost in the vein of like the YouTube video where it's like the lick and everybody plays. Yeah. So like, could you maybe even talk about the lick and like?
I don't even know what the lick is.
Just look up on YouTube jazz the lick and
it's just like a little contour that's in everything.
It's in everything. Yeah. And it's like a 6-minute video of literally everybody playing that lick at some point or the other.
I hope I don't play the lick.
Like there was some really quintessential things that I would equate to the jazz versions of, like when you play bluegrass, there's that's like the lick. That's the bluegrass G run. That's like Dale McCurry, Bill Monroe. That is the fundamental the lick. Beginner, they'll be like, they'll be like, day one, welcome to bluegrass. This is everywhere.
All right, so there's two the licks. I guess there's that's the Django chromatic.
Could we don't have enough volume. Could we get a little bit more volume on the part?
How's that?
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So that's the Django chromatic lick, which is the problem with those licks is that you can't really slow them down past a certain point because they have a smooth motion in it. It's not like you're fretting. Your hand is not like a mechanical lever. It's going, but it's a rhythmic thing. So it needs to be like a right? So it's exactly 2 measures and lands on one, or sorry, two measures there. So that's something that you play on like dominant chords a lot of time, or dominant chords resolve, like an E7 to an A, right? Which you have a lot in this kind of, right? You go from an E7 to an A, so and it goes like, right? That kind of, right? So it's not really a chromatic scale. It's more like just a pattern of 4 notes. The 2-finger thing that Django's, disability is actually very helpful with some of these things. But it's not a pure chromatic scale in the sense you would.
Yeah.
You could do that.
It's almost like a visually symmetrical thing that ends with a wind up across the high E string. You actually played a couple of chords that I think our more advanced or intermediate guys would take for granted, but maybe our beginners would not take for granted.
Oh, yeah, I just played
Just an
an
E7 chord.
E7
So let's
to an
talk
A
about
minor
that.
6.
Yeah, let's talk about that E7 shape. Traditionally, if you're just starting out with guitar, you're on Mel Bay page 4. You're playing E7 down here like a cowboy chord, right? So
Mm-hmm.
on the stack that you're stacking up, you put the you guys ring finger on the third dot, as they say, and that's your root, and you're stacking it 1 3 7, right? So let's stack that on up.
1 3 flat 7 1.
Yeah, one
So
three flats and one.
it omits the fifth. You know, the trick with all this stuff when you're playing jazz is to be able to have a complete connection between modes and chords, and you achieve that by being able to move all the notes in your mode inside each grip. So you want to first of all know all the 7 notes that fit the complete sound that fits. So in the case of that E7, right, it's A harmonic minor. It's the 5th mode of A harmonic minor. You want to be able to move that inside that grip, and then also inside this grip and inside this grip. So that, now there are tricks to do that. Inside that A harmonic minor, you have a diminished chord, right? Everybody, or maybe the very beginners don't know that, but take my
Our
word
metal
for it. It's
guys
there.
definitely do.
Okay, everybody, yeah, right. It's the mom's team.
Yep.
Right, you can do that thing. Now, that is, it's almost the interesting thing about guitars is the most helpful things also tend to be the biggest crutches, because it's so easy that you could just mechanically move it without thinking about what's going on. But a great way to get around that, like if you just know the grips, right? Here's like that E7, 3 frets apart kind of mentality. If you just move the melody note inside the scale on the top E string, you get all these interesting gypsy jazz kind of voicings, meaning so I'm playing just those 4 diminished grips, but inside them, I'm just changing the note on the high E string to be this A harmonic minor scale,
Nice.
right? And then I get that modal sound over that low E, right? And those are really the voicings that Django uses, right? Now, in jazz, it's not just about learning one chord, it's learning how one chord moves to another. So resolving to that A minor, you go and play A Dorian. But unlike pop or blues or other styles of music, the chord structures aren't built on, the 4-part chords don't have a 7, they have a 6 instead. So
Okay.
the
So
7.
let's walk through. So folks would know in the key of A, that 6 would be a major 6, not a minor 6.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
So
Dorian.
that would be when you're playing an A note, that would be an F sharp, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. But and it's really, this is the interesting thing about 6 chords, right? When I have a 6 chord, A,
Show us a couple of
C,
6 chords. Show us a couple of them.
sure. So the arpeggio would just be A, C, E, F sharp. Now notice those are the same notes as an F sharp half diminished chord. It's the same thing. It's an inversion of each other, right? Now here's the trick. If you just know that F sharp half diminished shape and how to invert it, four grips of that, and then you know how to walk just an A Dorian across, you can do the same kind of thing. And now if you can get from those diminished chords that I just showed you to that, you have a cadence, right? So here's... And that's really what all Django does. He doesn't do anything else. Right? When he's playing on all of me, right, on that E7, well, on that E7, for example, the chords there go C, E7, A7, D minor, and then E7, A minor, right? So that E7, A minor bit, when I get to that, and here I can just go, right? And that's really how that whole chord melody thing works. But it's just about having the complete modal vision connected to your chord shapes.
Yeah.
But it takes time. Now, licks are, I'm really not a lick guy.
Ironically,
I know,
a guy with a ton of licks is not a lick guy.
well,
But I do know what you're saying. I do know what you're saying when you're actually thinking your way through it. I'm very similar, where it's like I don't have a ton of licks that I go get. I just kind of play through it. I know what you're kind of.
It's weird because learning by licks is more like having a book of quotes, and you're like, oh my God, these people are so intelligent. I'm going to memorize them and wait for the time in conversation where it fits. But it's like a guy that just, kind of quotes these famous quotes out of context. We have a name for that. It's called a douchebag. It never fits. The situations never come where the thing you worked out at home perfectly fits. You have to keep very small pieces of Lego and make the structures spontaneously, and that's why that's why learning modes, learning scales, learning cool rhythms, learning techniques, that's the way to go, because you're always standing there with everything deconstructed. You're trying to just put something together in the moment. I think that's what improvisation is really about. But for the people looking for a lick, here's another gypsy jazz cliche, right? Over that A minor 6, something that you hear Django and everybody do constantly. It's just that thing. Now, what is that? It's if you visualize that A minor, it's basically you're starting from the flatted third, and then you play an enclosure around the roots. 7, 2, 1.
Okay, so that's really important. For those that don't know, an enclosure is something, man, you're taking me back to college here with this. An enclosure is something where you have, this is the way I would describe it. This is a redneck's version of describing an enclosure. You have your target thing that you're aiming at. Let's say it's A, right? So the final note that Dani played in that line was A. What he did was kind of wrap, if you have, and I visualize it like a timeline. You've got 4 little islands, right? And you're trying to jump on this island. Dani took these 2 notes, minor third and 7, and jumped that island. Boom. So now he went 7 to 2, or 9, if you will, and then he went from 2 to 1. So when you're looking at it in Mario, you're doing this thing, boop, 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 right? And that's right. Like your little Mario enclosure. An enclosure is a term that doesn't exist a lot in rock and roll or blues or anything. Even though sometimes it happens, we just don't use that grammar, right?
Yeah.
But in jazz, enclosures are everywhere, and it's almost like what is an enclosure is almost like what we rockers or country guys would just consider a lick. In swing and swing, Western swing, bebop, jazz, enclosures are your slightly bigger Lego pieces, as Dani.
Sure, it's exactly that.
And you would build a lick by stacking some enclosures together. So I hated to interject, but just sometimes, it's like you live in that world, and I'm trying to always think about guys that may not live in your world. So
yeah. Sure. I mean, it's funny because your world is the modern world, and it's hard to people look at jazz as if it's especially people discovering it on Instagram or something, as they look at it as something that has more sophisticated tools. But the truth is that if I put you in a time machine and sent you back 100 years, and the year now would be 1920, well, first of all, you'd still be dealing with a Spanish flu, so not too much would be different. But other than that, let's say you wanted to jam with your friends and you knew all your 2020 stuff. There would be 0 situations where you could play an 8-minute solo in E. It just didn't happen yet.
It
It's
wasn't
more
there.
of it wasn't there. So how would people who weren't academics jam? How would people play? How would you know what to play over what? And the truth is, since everything had harmony, everything had moving harmony, moving chord progressions, all of me is basically just written, and that was the kind of stuff people played. The question is, how would you learn music if all your pentatonic blanket uh, wasn't there? How would you improvise? And I think the answer is that you just had grips. You had chords that you knew, and you would arpeggiate the grips. Maybe not. Oh, I lost
Oh,
you there. Oh, there we
yeah, yeah.
are.
There you go.
So maybe you would, not play a full like shape of an arpeggio, but you would literally play the arpeggio, right? And if you knew a bunch of groups, this would be like your consonant safe places that would work in a solo. And you can see it in bluegrass when you guys like break down chords and just literally have all these rhythmic patterns, like all these rhythms you do of the chords themselves. And in jazz, what they did is it started with approach notes. The idea that you can, and to me, an enclosure is an approach note and a neighbor tone. It's the combination of both. So
Yeah.
approach notes deals with notes that are under, in pitch, under the actual arpeggio, under the chord. So if you have a C chord, your approach note for that C chord would just be this B chord, right? And you could play a contour leading, and it's always a half step under. That's how musical gravity works. We're not sensitive to ascending contours. When you're going up in pitch, you can be very dissonant and it still sounds in. When you're going down, it sounds totally different, right?
Yeah.
So that no longer sounded like a C major. That sounded like something else when I went down, but
Yeah,
up.
it sounded altered, some
Right. So, and the idea is that with approach notes, if I have a progression that has a few chords and I just use approach notes, like let's say a C, all of me is a good example, C, E, A, D minor, right? Those chords. If I just play those arpeggios, right? And now I do it with approach notes. Right. So it already kind of, it tells the story of the harmony. Now, neighbor tones, which are the notes above, are trickier because you need to know what your mode is. And people just eared it out because we're sensitive to to the information above the chord tone. So if I'm playing a C, I need to know that I have a D above the C, an F above the E, and a G above the A. And to combine that, I get enclosures. Right? And then A, D minor. Whatever. So
great.
that's kind of like the idea.
Man, that was fantastic. That right there should just be just a clip and a moment in and of itself out there for me. That was great. So I don't want to keep it too long. And man, that lesson
Keep
was
me. You
awesome.
have me.
The thing I would like to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
since we are home and everybody's kind of just surfing around and discovering things, what have you been listening to lately? It doesn't have to be guitar. Like, just what have you been listening to lately? What's kind of jumped up on your radar, or maybe you're revisiting? Either one. I just would like to kind of pick your brain on what's been in your musical diet over the
Sure.
past few months.
Well, I'm deep into Sinatra. Really dig that stuff. I always liked it, always listened to it, but I've been listening to it a lot. Actually, after hanging out with Tim, he showed me I can't remember their name, band from like the 30s, Ink Spots or something. And through them, I got to another group, like just some similar artists on Spotify that blew my mind called the Mills Brothers. blew my mind. Like it's like four vocalists and they just like do all these standards, but they all do mouth trumpet, and like it sounds like a big band. It's so crazy. I mean, it blows my mind. People that like can harmonize complex harmonies in a way that sounds so intuitive. It's just I don't understand how they know what they're doing. But yeah, I mean, old jazz is really where I've been for a long time. Um, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to find new music that's very exciting these days. I don't know. Well, especially now. I mean, this move to more at home, more producing, more editing, less playing is like I think the worst thing that could have happened to today's. Like there wasn't enough going out and playing as it was. And something I noticed, I think we talked about it too, but like something I noticed when I was in college was that all my teachers were practicing longer than John Coltrane was alive, and none of them were John Coltrane. You know, so practice alone is not the answer to your prayers. You know, it helps. A lot of people probably listening need a lot more practicing in their lives, and you will get somewhere practicing, but that place you want to get to is only available to players, because something happens when you're out there playing and you can't hit that pause button. You know, it's not available. You just survive the gig, do your best, try again tomorrow. But like it just massages things into place that will not fall into place any other way. So, you know, I hope this thing is over soon to where people can get back to that and, you know, make records that have these bits of life that like, you know, are really the things I'm looking for. You know, I'm greedy. I want more of that.
Man, and I think you can scope that out from jazz, right? We can scope out from a genre, and we can look at things and players like my biggest influences. People no secret, like guys like Bela Fleck, you know, Chris
Mm-hmm.
Steele, stuff like that. That's that organic growth. We can also jump over to you know bands like Free, Mountain, Allman
Mm-hmm.
Brothers, like Mississippi Queen on YouTube. If you look up 30 versions of Leslie playing it, you're getting 30 versions of Mississippi Queen. It's not the same
Sure.
thing. You know, it's not like classical, right? Like when you think
Mm-hmm.
of like classical and then, you know, modern progressive metal or whatever. I hate to use the term progressive metal, but modern music, right? It's almost like the point of it is to replicate the recording exactly, and no more, no
Yeah.
like the replication of it, versus the things that I think you and I personally look for to satisfy our artistic cravings. Are the same things that a Deadhead would look for in attending 30 different Grateful Dead shows.
It's exactly that. And I think, yeah, because the problem is that nerds took over the market and really,
Well, I
it's
mean, you
like,
know, like
because
you could say that, but I mean, on the other side of the coin, there's guys like or the artists like Sierra Hull, Billy Strings, you know, Molly Tuttle. They're definitely
sure, they're
high
out there.
levels. Yeah, it's like there's always an exception to the rule everywhere. But I think when we say took over the market, we mean took over Instagram or whatever. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, you know, if people want it, they can have it, but it's like, it seems to me like their version of growth is homework and their version of performance is show and tell.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah,
You know what I mean? Because it's like I fucking hate homework.
yeah.
I hated it in school. I would never do it. If practicing was like learning this little thing and like applying it in 10 ways and like just then make a video to graduate, I just wouldn't do it.
You
It's
just
like
wouldn't do it. It wouldn't get done, right?
it's
Versus the 200 gigs a year, or even if you don't have, and this is really important to our viewers, if you're not on a stage every night, treat your basement or your hang or your rehearsal space with your buddies like that stage every night.
Hmm.
Don't stop mid song if something gets flubbed. I think that's something that you were
Oh
talking about,
yeah.
that ironing out thing. Of course the audience is important and it puts a different perspective and different feeling on it. But I think also jamming, step one is not playing music alone, right?
Hmm.
Step two is playing with your buddies, and then step three is incorporate a listener. Step four is incorporate a venue and an audience. At
Yeah.
least only in my opinion. And my opinion doesn't mean
Yeah.
much, but like that seems to be what has gotten at least my favorite players to where they are. When I look across the board and see the guys that really just like blow my mind, it's like that's the things that happen. And there's guys that may not have toured the world playing in a band. Like I just interviewed Martin Miller, but he's in a studio doing these band videos and he's like playing with people. Like
Hmm.
even if you're going to stream and do video content, you can get that organic growth that I think is so important by just playing with other people. What does it go back to in our conversation even today is like the rhythm section of Louis Armstrong and how Louis played over that. That now we're tying two things together. That would never happen without guys playing music together.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be very specific, I feel like, in what it is that you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So I think with people, with musicians, with people like you and me, the the I can speak for myself, but what I'm trying to do is maybe pass on a feeling that was passed to me. I listened to records, I listened to shows. It made me feel a certain way. I understood what music does, like just on an emotional, subjective, personal level. And I was like, wow, this thing that I'm feeling is so awesome. And I'm so impressed with the people giving it to me that I want to be that guy that passes it on. And you have to ask yourself very hard questions like, is it happening? When I'm playing, is it like, am I just, pressing in the right places that I know sound good against the chord in time? Or is there some sort of transfer of, you know, emotion happening? And I think you can get lost in the world of making content in a way that you don't ask yourself some very basic questions about the song or the music or your playing, which is like, do I like this? Is this good? Is this a good place to go? How in touch am I with what I'm doing?
Do
Am
I
I?
like this? That's a selfish question, but super important to ask. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't like it, why are you doing it? Are you doing it just for the likes or the clicks? Are you doing it to just impress the peers that are sit across the musical table from you? It's like those aren't
Oh,
those aren't those aren't reasons to do things.
no, no. And there's nothing sadder than, seeing like, one of those like shrapnel shredders now that's like just not into it. It's like you see that's sad too. It's like you need to, like, that's what I fucking love Ingve. I always did, but like he's so into himself. It's like, it's like I
He
don't
loves
care. Like,
what he plays.
oh, it's like he closes a complete
It's like
circle.
watching Ingve play the guitar is like watching a little kid open Christmas presents.
Exactly.
Like
It's like
it's the
he's into all
greatest
of
thing
it.
he's ever done. And
I
that
know.
right there, in and of it, just speaking about it makes me smile because it's so infectious. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To
Yeah.
see that kind of love for what you do and what you create. It's like, is Ingve concerned with playing, enclosures over all of me? He doesn't give a crap
No.
about that. It's like it doesn't matter. But it's like we don't have to. This is what I'll say to everyone. We don't have to learn Ingve songs to impress Ingve fans, then learn Enclosures to impress Dani fans, then learn Chicken Picking to don't. If you don't like anything that Ingve, Dani, or Andy Wood do, then don't do it. Like, do
Right.
what you love and cultivate what you love. But if there is a way that you can incorporate something that you're like, oh, I liked what Dani said there. I like that. And if it does speak to you, water it. Let it, like
Yeah.
massage
Yeah.
it.
You got. I mean, yeah. I think in one way, I mean, I think it's very confusing for a person growing up watching Instagram, watching the Woodshed, and you have all these people here. because they haven't put themselves together musically, most of them yet. And to see all these developed people that took profoundly different roads makes it almost imaginable that you could do all these things, but you can't. You know, it's like you have to choose a lot of specific pathways. Even if you talk about technique, chicken picking was a wonderful example. If you hold your pick the way I do, you can't play the way you do, and vice versa. It's just all that stuff is not going to be available physiologically, you know. And if you try to do both, you'll probably do both. Maybe if you have tons of time, okay. But if you try to play like us too, and then also like Holdsworth, you're just going to be mediocre at everything.
There's not enough hours in a day. That's a common thread with all the guys that I've had on here. And this is something I'm desperately, I guess my mission statement with these interviews is to bring in guys that are so in, like, created their own thing to do their own thing. Like Tom does his thing. He sounds like Tom. There's no, like, that doesn't get there, like you said,
Right.
by just taking just a little bit, doing everything just kind of, sort of, versus
Yeah.
like spending time to cultivate your own growth.
Yeah. But I think to help people watching, what you need to just understand is that your compass is made up by what you like, but you do have to decide what you like better, right? So it's like if you like chicken picking the most, and then you hear Django Reinhardt and you're like, it's nice, but I'm gonna go practice chicken picking. That's great. Just stay on that lane for as long as you can till you get something real, you know. But if you just flip flop technically, it's, you know, you just kind of always stay in square one. And you just got to travel down that road, because everything at the end of the day, once you have your technique together and your personality together, everybody meets up again, you know. It's
Yeah,
like
that's a
in the
beautiful
song,
way to word that. Yeah.
you know. It's like, it's, but you just got to make it over all the technical humps and just go in a direction. Now there are bad techniques if you just if you haven't put enough into it, or you go marching towards a dead end, be careful. But you know, there are definitely a lot of proven, you know, tested ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, but navigate through what you like and dislike, and just be truthful about it. I think that's really the thing. If you're not excited about what you're doing, do something else. It's going to be a really impossible road to like try to be a musician playing in a way that in an uninspired way. You just have no future in it.
I love it, dude. There's no way we can top that. That is the beautiful bow on top of our conversation.
Aw,
I love it. Do me a favor
sure.
and I always say, let's do a little housekeeping here. Where are the .coms and ats and things that people can find more of Dani, more Marbin, all the
Sure.
stuff like that? Just give us the rundown on where we can
The
find your stuff.
spiel.
The
All right.
spiel.
So marbinmusic.bandcamp.com is where you buy the stuff, which is wonderful. We love money. Every time we get money, we use it. We move it from bank account to bank account. Just, you know, money's great. So you can buy our stuff there. You can follow us on Facebook, which is where we are most active, and all the live feeds are there. That's facebook.com/Marbin Music. Marbin is like Marvin with a B, Marbin, Marbin, Marbin. I don't know why I said. And then our Instagram exists, but it only has strikebacks. I don't know how to make 60-second content. So all it has is like people talking shit and me smacking them down.
Which is
I've,
the best. Please follow that Instagram account.
I've dedicated our whole Instagram to that. People are writing me like, "Why don't you post music?" I was like, "I hate music."
So good,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah, and yeah. Other than that, we're gonna do more of these backyard concerts till this thing blows over. It's been an incredible experience. We had, oh my god. I mean, I know we put the bow and we can't top it, but I gotta tell you something. We were playing in the bayou in New Orleans, and wonderful people. They're all fishermen. They can fish out their window. They're so close to the water, and it's like all those buildings in that area. It's like the house starts on the third floor. They just have these poles because they have so many storms that everything gets flooded. and like where everybody's there's either a captain, a fisherman, works on a boat, something. And we're playing like, you know, one of those jazz shows you saw. This guy comes and he gives us edibles, and he gives me one, and he gives Dani like 2.5, and then he's just like, he has a little baby at home now, so he's just like every night just going like all in, you know, just like he's 22. It's just like, and we finish our show, and he's like sitting on this like one person sofa, and it just looks like, you know, the time went that like 9-3, just like laying on it, just like, and you know, he's out, and I'm playing like an acoustic, my acoustic guitar, and we're done with our show, but I'm still singing songs. I'm like very stoned, but like I'm enjoying the social scene. People are like singing along some songs. And there's this one woman, she's sitting at the table. She looks like she's in her 60s, and I think she likes some meth, because I can tell she doesn't have a lot of teeth. Like she has that face, people like looks like they just sucked on a lemon. Like, and she's just like locking eyes with me, and she's just digging it like hard, like really hard. And then I start singing Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen, right? So it's like she's just like oh my God. And she just comes up to me, right? And I finish, and she's like, how do you know that song? And I'm like, Hallelujah? And she's like, how do you know that song? It was never in the top 20, top 100, top 10,000. It's like, this song was #1 for years, right? And then he's like looking around. He's like, listen to this. And then she goes like, it's a Hawaiian song. And Dani's just like, Canadian. She goes like, Hawaiian. It's like, Canadian. She goes like, listen, I'm an old bitch. I know everything. This is a Hawaiian traditional song. Let me tell you something. This guy's been chasing me 47 years. 2 days ago, he asked me to marry him. I have to give him an answer. He's Hawaiian. It's got to be a sign. That's an epic moment.
So is there a song that you're going to write? So now you have to tell the viewers that, you know, about how you name your originals.
Oh yeah. Everything about shit like that just happened on the road to meet psychopaths. That was beautiful. Also, like right after, there was like a guy sitting there listening to, and he was just like nodding his head, and Dani and him were like locking eyes, just like going, yeah. And in Dani's mind, Dani was like, what a crazy bitch. And like, there's this guy, Reggie, was looking at Dani like, Canadian, Hawaiian.
I love it.
It's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Love it, dude. Thank you for blessing us with your time today.
Sure.
Great to see you again.
Likewise.
Can't wait for more music from you. And man, you have reignited a love in old jazz for me. And I haven't listened to a lot of stuff since I was in school, so I think that's going to be on my playlist all week long.
Nice. Well, thank you.
Thank you for bringing that stuff back.
Thanks for having me in your shit.
All right, my man. Let's talk soon, and appreciate you.
See ya.